so few people who could succeed actually do succeed because they've given up on learning, study, and growth. LSG, learning, study, and growth. So the neurobiologists and neuropsychologists will tell us that the human brain craves learning, and it craves curiosity, and it craves novelty. And unfortunately, a lot of us, we learned in school, but the moment we left school and walked out into the world, we've given up on our personal commitment to growth. And so I'm inviting you with great love and respect to reclaim the curiosity you once knew as a child when you were overflowing with awe and wonder. You see, our natural state is the way we're as children. We're built to be curious. We're built to be passionate. We're built to be full of energy. We're built to question things. You look at a little child and it's like, Mommy, Daddy, why? You look at an adult and they've contracted their curiosity. They've given up on seeing the magic in the world. They no longer grow. And so the mindset I want you to start practicing, because no idea works unless you do the work. To install a core belief, you just practice it until it becomes automatic. That's how you actually get to change your psychology. And so the mindset I invite you to start practicing each day is what I call the 2X, 3X mindset. To double your income and your impact, triple your investment in two core areas. Number one, your personal mastery, and number two, your professional capability. And how do you do that? Again, you do it through learning, study, and growth. So I guess what I'm suggesting to you is you look at most of the population and you commit yourself to what I call anti-majority behavior. If you want to have a great life, a soaring life, a creative life, a productive life, a ultra prosperous life, look at what most people do and do the opposite. So most people, what they do is they love consuming as opposed to creating. We live in a civilization of consumers. Buy this, eat this, do this, consume this. But the top 5%, those who play in the rare air of world class, are not consumers, they're creators. Suffering gets a bad rap in our world today. In society, we all want to quit, but if you look at, again, a Nelson Mandela, a Mother Teresa, a Mahatma Gandhi, a Rosa Parks, a Martin Luther King Jr., a Marcus Aurelius. You look at the great statespeople, the great women who led nations, the great men who led movements. I've been studying samurai lately. I've been studying a lot of the great warriors. I've been reading a lot about Alexander the Great. And you could say, well, Robin, in the comment section or whatever, you could say, Robin, some of these people were bloody, some of these warriors. And I hear you. My larger point is simply this. If you look at the great warriors or the great empire builders or the great heroes of humanity, they all had one thing in common. Many of them developed invincible moral authority to live by their deepest vision, values, and virtues through the hard winters of deep suffering. A GCA, a gargantuan competitive advantage, in a world where everyone wants it easy. They want a warm house. They want a car with heated seats if you live in a cold place. We want great food. We want a life of ease. We want all our devices around us. We want easy friends who don't make us, maybe who don't stretch us. We want to, if we even read, we want easy books. I guess what I'm suggesting to you is voluntary discomfort will build you and strengthen you. And the great heroes of history often didn't do it voluntarily. They suffered. They suffered in a prison cell. They suffered for the benefit of their movement. They suffered long treks through mountains with not a lot of food when they're on a military campaign. They suffered the humiliation of being attacked by their critics. And so in this age of ease, we are becoming weak as leaders, weak as humans, weak as possibilitarians, and I'm just saying to you, sure, have your nice things. We all want a nice life, myself included, and yet make sure you don't fall into the chasm or the trap of living a life that is so easy that you don't develop those muscles of strength, fiery resolve, and moral authority.
Why do so many people on the planet right now medicate themselves? They medicate themselves with too much technology. Anyone agree with me? Show of hands or a round of applause. Like, they are medicating themselves in front of that white screen. 110 times checking the smartphone every day. That is not checking your technology. You know what that is? That is an addiction and an escape from what is. And if you said to most people, did you know you're addicted to your smartphone? Did you know you're addicted to your notifications? Did you know you're addicted to your television? Did you know you're addicted to your excuses? Did you know you're addicted to gossip? Did you know you're drinking too much alcohol because you are addicted to it? Did you know that this is all a flight from what is? Because deep down inside, the deepest unknown part of you knows that you are in pain over potential unlived. They would fight you to the death. Am I making sense here? Show of hands. Deep down inside, I believe most people on the planet are heartbroken. Why? Because they have betrayed the visions, ambitions, values, mission in their heart. They have betrayed their talent by buying into the mass hypnosis that the world has sold them. And now they're 35 and they're 45 years old. And they're just, oh, no, this is what everyone does. And they just check. And then, you know what Blaise Pascal, the French mathematician, said? Most people, their misery is derived by their inability to sit quietly in a room by themselves. You know how many people are frightened of their own company? And I've shared with you, right? No, seriously, they're frightened of their own company. I've shared with you the neurobiology, transient hypofrontality. You can't play at Edison. You can't play at Misty Copeland. You can't play at world class unless you bring yourself away from the world and do the practice, do the training, do the thinking to set up transient hypofrontality. And that creates the pharmacy of mastery. And it brings you from beta to alpha. And it releases the dopamine and the serotonin. And the psychologists have told us that state is flow. And I guess what I've been suggesting with transient hypofrontality, you have flow within you. You have genius within you. Most of us are so distracted. They're so overstimulated. They're so interrupted that they don't create the silent spaces where their genius can present themselves.
Secondly, most people, the 95%, and this is no judgment, just reporting, but they're pleasure seekers. If you look at the true warriors of humanity, you look at the true empire builders, you look at the true titans who are constructing a better world, they're less about pleasure seeking because they understand that growth comes through discomfort. Willpower is built through voluntary acts of quote unquote suffering. I mean, to do hard work is to grow. To push yourself on a project to places that frighten you is to expand your creative capabilities. I hope I'm making sense for you here. But pleasure seekers don't create monuments. If you look at the Taj Mahal, if you look at Piazza Navona in Rome, if you look at the Great Wall of China, if you look at the Mona Lisa created by Da Vinci, if you look at the Sistine Chapel created by Michelangelo, if you look at any great company, okay, an Apple under Steve Jobs, for example, or it might have been Elon Musk's companies. I don't know what companies most speak to you, but if you look at any world-class company, Under Armour comes to mind. These companies took grit, they took suffering, they took relentlessness, Any creative person has to face the arrows and slings of their critics. So you get to world class through the doorway of discomfort. And how do you build a strong inner core? You do it by walking into the metaphorical hard winters of growth. That's how you train. You look at a great athlete. It's the way they show up in the championship game is simply how they showed up in the lonely light of the early hours at practice. It wasn't easy. I mean, I always think of Muhammad Ali. He said, I didn't like any one of those early morning training sessions, but I said to myself, suffer now and spend the rest of your life as a champion. We live in a world where the dominant message of society is if you want to be a leader, be sort of mean, be aggressive. You know, you got to thump your chest a little more if you want to lead the field. You got to speak a little bit louder. You've got to be all about me versus thinking about we. And so what I want to offer to you right now is simply a reminder, because your wisest part knows the truth. You know, on the last hour of your last day, when you reflect on your life, if you were not kind, I think you're going to feel heartbroken. One of my mentors when I was a young lawyer was a judge, and a very special man. I learned so much from him. I was so incredibly influenced by his commitment to excellence, by his integrity, and by his outright honor. And a few years ago, he had retired, and I made the trek back to where he was living. And we spent 2 glorious hours together where we remembered, you know, our best times when I was working for him. And towards the end of our conversation, I asked him for advice, you know, like, what's most important? What are the best lessons you've learned from life? What suggestions do you have for me as I go forward, as I pursue my mountaintops? And he said this, and he said, you know, he spoke of excellence and he spoke of honesty. And then at the very end of our conversation, he said, and Robin, please always remember to be kind. He said, oh, Robin, it's so important to be kind. And then he reached over and he did something he'd never done. He hugged me and he said, Robin, I love you.